Hello friends, this is Mutation. If you've been watching my streams, I've been playing this game like non-stop for the past week. It seems to have fallen under the radar. Unfortunately, a lot of people haven't really bought it and tried it, but I think this game is really solid. It definitely has its flaws. Uh, when I first bought the game, I felt like the first playthrough was too difficult for the wrong reasons, and apparently the developer agreed because they I talked to them and left them a lot of feedback, and they made the first playthrough a lot easier. Now, you might be thinking that's a bad thing, but there's like 30 difficulty levels in this game, so it doesn't really make sense to have it so people get stuck on the first one, and then there's a risk of refunds and bad reviews, which is a kind of a death sentence for a smaller game like this. Now, this game does have some comparisons to Hades. You can definitely make some comparison to Hades, especially in how the moveset works, but I think what really sets this game apart is that there's like multiple weapons. There's a fusion skill mechanic, which we'll get into shortly. Hopefully the game will just give me one right away. If not, we're going to go into the shelter and I'll show it off there, and hopefully it won't take too long. So what sets this game apart is that there's a universal parry.
Yeah.
So one of the things I don't like about Dead Cells and Hades is that if there is a parry in those games, you always have to have a shield, and I always felt like that kind of neutered your combat options. In this game, every weapon has a parry, and the parry gives you a lot of bonuses. The parry was actually buffed in a patch a couple days ago so that you can break their shield, and it does a lot more damage. The parry is very satisfying to use. Now, the window is pretty large, but because of all the crap that's going to be coming at you, there is a risk to using it. As you can see, there's a pretty long recovery if you don't get it, but if you do get it, it actually does a lot of damage, and you can also parry traps in this game as well. So there's lots of parts where there'll be spikes on the ground, and you can parry the spikes and use it to just get like an invincible stinger. I think the game feels really solid to play. It doesn't really feel like any of the attacks are unfair, outside of the final boss, which has like really weird hitboxes on its attacks. But other than that, I really enjoy this game. So first off, we're going to explain the gear system and the monster gallery. So there's 5 tiers of gear in this game. There's green, blue, purple, orange, and red. Red being the final tier. Now you have to get these from shelter, and I'll probably explain these in another video because it takes like a good 10 to 15 minutes to clear a shelter, even with this pretty decked out character. So we'll probably get into that in a separate video. I don't want this video to be too long. But you can equip things on the parts, and as you get farther in rarity, you can equip up to 3 parts, monster parts, on a piece of gear. So right now, I have increased movement speed when you land a crit, so if you're running a crit build, you're going to be running a lot faster, which is going to allow you to clear the game a lot faster. I have a bunch of other stuff in here. But basically, these are passive bonuses that are always active, and you get these from doing the difficulty challenges. So I'm 5 difficulty levels away from completely clearing the game, but since I'm so far in, I'm trying to do all the achievements, so I'm kind of waiting until I do level 30 until I get everything else done. But this is a really cool system because it rewards you for increasing the difficulty, and then you can also kind of supplement your build as well. Like this one reduces cooldown time for 12% for anything that's on cooldown after landing a crit. So if you're landing a lot of crits, you're going to be able to use your moves like way more often, which is really fun. This one as well is very good to have as well because you get 6 Zed cash, which is basically the money upon killing a monster with shield. I think there's another one in here as well. And basically what that's going to let you do, it seems minor just reading it, but it makes it so when you combine it with this, you get 5 just for killing a monster. What this means is you're going to be getting a lot of money, and you'll be able to interact with the money mechanics and the stores like way more often. Okay, so we have a normal attack. This game is very responsive too. It feels like when you push a button, he does what you tell him to do.
Yeah.
Now you can't cancel out of this, but you are invincible during it, so it actually doesn't really matter that much. And when you get into the fusion mechanic, which is something, I guess we'll just show that right now. I'll go into the shelter and try that out. Okay, so if you go into the handbook here, there's a fusion mechanic. So basically, if you combine one element that's level 2, and then you get a level 1 of another element. Now, the elements depend on which weapon you have. So right now, I have the Guandao. So for the normal attack, I want 2 fire and 1 ice, or 2 ice and 1 fire. Now, if I get that, then the entire move will change. The same thing for the L2 as well. So we're going to try to get that right now. It might take a couple tries, but this is probably the fastest way to do it. We'll try to get it with this too. Alright, so we got an ice here. Alright, that's not the right one. I'm getting trolled really hard right now. Okay, so there's a fusion right there. So as you can see, I combined wind and thunder on my dash. So now I get these little lightning things, but you can also do it with your main weapon as well. Maybe we can get it here. I think the game is just going to say no. Yeah. Now, when you're in the actual game, you will have rerolls. So if you played stuff like Binding of Isaac, you get these little cards that allow you to reroll. So it's not too bad, but you basically got to see how the fusion mechanic worked there. Also, weapons. Weapons have permanent passives that you can unlock for beating certain objectives. So for the Guandao, which I think is, from my experience, I haven't really seen anyone else playing this game. Seems like the most busted weapon if you build it properly. You can see I have increased damage of normal attack by 20% to monsters with broken shields. Now, I think one thing that's wrong with the shield system is that once you start getting into the higher difficulties, it gets like almost impossible to break their shield. So maybe they should nerf the amount that the shield increases when you get up in the difficulties. It's basically never going to be able to use that, but you also get increase the damage of weapon skill by 20% to monsters with shield, and then you also get increased damage dealt by 30% when hitting an enemy from the back. So with the fusions, that's actually going to do a lot of damage. Now this is the other persistent element in the game, the final persistent element, which is, outside of unlocking weapons of course, which is a skill tree. Now every level you get 1 point, and the game also lets you respec at any point, so this is the build that I'm using right now. I don't want to go through the whole thing. I don't want to make the video too long, but I've got more HP. I've got 2 resurrections. I've got 6 extra rerolls. A bunch of extra cash and HP recovery. These things add up. They seem pretty minuscule, but considering how many rooms that you go through, this can actually give you a lot of extra money. There's also one for extra experience as well, and then as you get farther down here, you get more shield break capability, you get more move speed, which is going to be useful because the gameplay loop. The currency in this game is actually very intelligently designed. You'll basically never have any currency be useless besides maybe the EXP. I don't know how far the experience cap goes, but I'm almost at the end of the skill tree here, probably within the next day if I keep no-lifing this, so I'll probably find out about that. But the weapon badges, which is what you use to unlock new weapons and stuff, that never becomes useless, which I think is a really cool thing to have in practice, because in a lot of these roguelikes, the meta currency becomes useless after you've been playing for, you know, a couple dozen hours. But here, you're going to need them for keys to get the gear in the shelter, and you can get about maybe 500 a run, and you need 5 keys to get a 20% chance to open the red box and get a red gear. So it can take quite a while. There's also a durability system in this as well. Now, before you get upset, it's not going to be like Breath of the Wild where, you know, you punch 3 times and it's gone. Basically, it just goes down a little bit if you rage quit a mission or you fail. If you fail a run, then it will go down. But the stats on all of these are exactly the same every time, so considering you're probably going to get a lot of oranges while trying to get reds, you're always going to have orange gear, and orange gear is more than enough to get through the game. Alright, so, sorry that took so long. It's kind of... There's a lot of meta progression in this game, I kind of had to explain it. In any case, this is the difficulty setting, so you get monster parts from doing this. The monster parts, as I already explained, are used for, like, permanent build stuff that you can put on your weapon. So we're not going to go up to level 30, just because I kind of just want to get through the game because I'm trying to unlock the rest of the achievements. I have like 85% of the achievements. But what's nice about this is it's kind of like Hades, where you don't have to unlock, you don't have to give everything more health. There's lots of other ways to make the game harder, like increase their shield, their crit rate, how often they attack. You don't really have to increase their health until like the very end. So right now I have it on difficulty level 25. Alright, let's go. We're gonna play through the first level here and then end the video. This game's got a lot of terms and mechanics and stuff to explain. We'll probably do a full commentated run of this later. Alright, so we got a fire there. That's a pretty good start. So now I need one fire and one ice, and then I'll be able to get a fusion. Yeah, the parry feels really good to use. There's also buffs you can get for the parry as well that increase its range and like slow down the enemies and stuff, so you're really incentivized to parry pretty much whenever you can. These are the chests. Sometimes they're mimics, sometimes they're like actual, just regular chests, and they'll have either rerolls or keys in them. Rerolls are very important in this game because of the fusion system. Let's parry the spike. Oh, never mind, they already died. I don't have their health increased at all, just to get through the game faster, so they're gonna die pretty quickly. Got to explain Valkyrie attacks as well. You can also change her weapon. The thing that kind of sucks about this game is some of the weapons don't have fusion skills, and the game doesn't really tell you which ones don't. So I thought the game was bugged at first. It turns out some weapons don't have fusion skills, so they can be a lot less interesting to use just because they don't have that whole fusion mechanic. Right now I'm using the base gun because the fusion skills are pretty good. So that right there is a QTE, they call it termination. Now it's not really an automated thing, there's a chance that it will happen when you kill something, and then you can use that to kind of kill some of the other enemies. Which actually feels pretty cool, because it's not like really long animation, and it's not something you're doing all the time. Which I think can be a problem with QTEs in these kinds of games, is just watching the same animation over and over. In this game, it's basically really nice if you get it, because you're getting, like, free crowd control. Let's parry the spike. Satisfying. Any game where you can parry hazards is, obviously top tier. Alright, so we're gonna grab that and try to get at least one fusion before this, this first level ends, but I already showed the mechanics, so I'm not gonna worry too much about RNG if the game says no. So you don't want to replace this because you'll lose the fusion, and also level 2 of one element and then level 1 of the other one. So you need a total of 3 drops of the element that you're trying to go for. So there's Valkyrie shooting. I will say the dash in this game feels a little bit unresponsive. There's a lot of recovery on it, so sometimes you'll dodge something and still get hit anyway. The parry does not have that problem because it has a pretty large window, and the stinger that you do after it is also invincible, so that definitely helps things. But the dash can feel a little bit unresponsive. I think maybe they should like lower the recovery rate or something so that there's less of a chance of that happening. But the parry is so strong it doesn't really matter that much. So anyway, this is the boss transformation. When you beat a boss, you can transform into them for a while and then basically do a bunch of invincible damage, but you can also increase the capabilities of it as well. Like, I actually don't like this one. I like the squid the most because the squid is probably the best for speedrunning because it puts, like, lightning rings on the ground, and it covers a pretty decent chunk of most of the rooms in the game, so you can pop that, and then the lightning rings will still be out after you stop transforming into the squid, so you can pretty much just kind of clean up anything that's left, especially with the QTE system. So we're going to go ahead and increase the damage of it, and wait until we fight the squid and transform into that later. Alright, so since I have like a pretty optimized build, I don't really need to go in the cash rooms anymore. I think experience and weapon badges and elements are the things I'm going to go for first. There. Let's go ahead and pop this. The enemy generator. Bird. The difficulty system in this game is pretty cool because you don't have to increase how much damage they do or how much health they have, which I think is always the most boring way to make a game harder. And in this game's defense, it does need to have more health and more damage because of how much meta progression there is. If this game did not have so much meta progression, I think being able to like double their health and stuff would really kill the pacing. Luckily the game is designed intelligently, and you don't really have to do it till the end. So you're like at like level 30, level 25. Alright, so ready for a fusion on the L2, which is the wind. I promise this game is really difficult at the beginning. I promise it's really difficult at the beginning. They made it quite a bit easier, but I've got like 26 hours of meta progression, so kind of have to realize that when you watch this. Might think the game looks too easy. I also have not increased their health at all with the difficulty system because I'm trying to get all the achievements. Normally I don't care about achievements, but the achievements in this game are pretty reasonable. I already have like over 80% of them, so I'm not really wanting to increase their health much. Just to get through the game faster. Alright, so that's the end of the first level, so we're going to get to the rest of the gameplay loop here and sign off. Okay, so this is like the transitional area between levels or biomes, whatever you want to call them. So what you can do here is you can level up. So if you got some levels between levels, then you got some levels between biomes, I guess I should say. And then you can get your points here, you can spend your points here. Also, if you go into the shelter, which is the multiplayer mode, which don't worry, I have cleared it solo multiple times. It's actually pretty well balanced. You'll get a currency for clearing them, and what this allows you to do is two things. First, you can get an element here. So what we're going to do is we're going to re-roll and try to get the fusion. There we go. So I got the fusion, which is like one of the most busted things in the game that I found. So you want to be doing the shelter all the time because it will give you access to the gear here. The gear is persistent, it does have durability, but they're all exactly the same. It's not like Diablo-style loot, it's very set loot, so more like loot in like a Tales game, which is always the same every time. So if one expires, don't worry, you're not going to have to go grind and try to get the exact same thing again. You will have to get the exact same thing, but it's not going to be any different from the first time you got it, so it's actually going to work quite well. And once you get to the end of the game, you're going to be getting a lot of orange gear anyway, and orange gear is more than enough to get through the game, so it's not too bad. And also you can talk to this NPC here, and they will have buffs for your specific run that are permanent throughout the run. So you want to be doing shelter pretty much all the time, just to spend your keys and to get this currency, because you're going to be getting like about 4 extra items or mutations every time that you go through a run, provided that you get to the end and you have 400 points. So you want to always have 400, and then these are kind of nice to have as well. So at this point you can go into the shelter, which I'm not going to show because it would take like another 15 minutes of this video and I don't want it to be too long. But basically it's multiplayer where there's like certain objectives. There's 3 maps, and each map has 2 sets of gear. So there'll be 2 purple there, 2 green, and then so on and so forth until you get all the way up to orange and purple. So it takes 5 keys to use the red boxes. The red boxes have a chance. I think the developers said it's a 20% chance to get a red piece, but you'll also get a lot of orange and wells. So even if you're getting crap luck, you're going to be having a surplus of orange. So you want to be able to use those pretty much every time that you go in. So I recommend going into a shelter with at least 10 keys. And if you go into the shelter here, we'll go ahead and show this one thing here before I go. Now the weapon badges, the upper right hand corner currency, those are used to unlock the weapons. So there's weapons for both the protagonist and the Valkyrie, which is the assist character that you have. And what's nice about this game is that, you know, you're going to unlock everything pretty quickly. You can get about 500 badges on average for clearing an entire run with the true last boss, which appears after the 5th playthrough. So it will take you about 2 full runs to get 10 keys, but there's also an NPC that will give you objectives for getting about 3 extra keys per run. So you can spend your weapon badges after you've unlocked everything to get these keys. And like I said, you don't want to go in there with less than 10 keys because that will allow you to get both boxes and give you at least a 20% chance of getting something. Alright, so that's basically the gameplay loop. Besides that, it's pretty much the same thing until you get to the end. I think this game is really solid. There definitely are some problems with it. Some of the weapons feel weaker than the others. I don't think they should nerf any weapons. I think they should mostly just add more fusion skills and kind of tell you that which fusion skills the weapons have so that you don't keep trying to get it. I kind of got catfished by that a little bit when I first started playing because I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting the fusion skills, but not all of them have them, so you might want to stick with like the first batch of weapons like the spear and the guandao because those have pretty good ones and they're pretty much be able to use them with the base gun as well for the Valkyrie. So you can get a total of 4 fusion skills with most of the weapons, but some of them don't have them. And then maybe make it a little bit easier to get the red items because I've been grinding for hours and I only have 2 of them. I think maybe they should have some kind of currency or maybe increase the chances if you're on a higher difficulty or something. But other than that, this game is really solid and they're very receptive to feedback. They got a lot of complaints about how the first playthrough was really rough, and they made it a lot easier to get into the post-game, and they've improved a lot of other things as well. They've nerfed the enemies, they've buffed the parry. I think this game is worth the $15. It might not replace some of your best roguelikes, but I actually like this game more than like Hades and Dead Cells, just because the parry is universal. I like the meta progression as well. There's a lot of reasons to keep playing, and even after you've unlocked everything, there's still like more stuff that you can do. You can experiment with builds and stuff. The game is currently available on PC only. It does work perfectly on the Steam Deck. I've been playing it quite a bit at my caregiver job, so if you have a Steam Deck, I definitely recommend buying this game. It's one of the better running roguelikes that you can play on there right now. I hope this helps. If you like the game, please support it, please buy it, and leave them a positive review. And also, if you have any complaints about the game, let the developer know. I've been talking to them for a while, and they're very receptive to feedback. So the game will only get better from here on out, provided that it gets more exposure. Thanks for watching.